Let's review what we've done in the previous clip. This point in source control is tagged as 2.3. We created a simple component for a simple React application, and we made sure that we can use some modern JavaScript features like class properties and the async await syntax. To render the React application, we used Webpack, and we generated a bundle.js file that we included in our index template. In the Webpack configuration, we first used the Babel polyfill library. We needed that so that the async await feature work on the client side. And then we're starting from the index component and bundling everything into bundle.js. And during that process, for every file that ends in JS, we are using the Babel loader on it. And that would make Webpack understand the JSX syntax. That's it. If you check out this point in the GitHub history, run both Webpack and the server, you should see this output in the browser. We're now going to make a simple React application that works with a data collection and see how to present this data efficiently. Let's assume that we have this list of articles coming from an API somewhere, and we want to create a React application to display them. I prepared some test data for this exercise, which you can access with this link. I'm going to download this data locally into the project. I'll use wget-o to save the file under libtestdata.json. And the link is bit.ly/react blog test data. Take a moment to understand the simple structure of this data object and think about the components tree that we need to represent it. Here's an important question for you to think about first. Do you think we should work with this data as is, or should we transform it into a different structure first? Pause the video here and think about that. This data object represents a list of articles as an array and a list of authors as another array. Every article and author object has a unique ID attribute to identify it, and every article has an author ID attribute to map that article to its author. Very simple structure. I want you to understand an important point first. If you're receiving such structure from an API, that does not mean that your React application has to work with this data structure as is. You can always have a data transform layer between your API and your React application. But the question is, why would you do that? Well, depends on what you want to do in this app, how much data there is, and how much you want to optimize the app. For example, arrays are easier to work with to list records, but when you need to find an element in a collection, arrays are not the best structure, while objects or maps, for example, are much better in that case. Since we want to look up an author for every article, we should probably convert the authors array into an object with every author indexed by their ID. But what about the articles array? If you think about it, you'll eventually need to look up articles as well. For example, when you edit an article or delete an article. Those operations are a lot faster on objects than arrays, so we should probably convert the articles array into an object as well. Please note that this only matters if you have a big list. For very small lists, the performance difference is not significant. Another question about the structure here. Should we make every article object nest its own author object instead of having just an author ID and needing to look up an author object every time we render an article? Certainly, nesting the complete author object under every article would be easier to deal with in the React app, but think about articles with the same author, for example. If we nest the author object, we will be dealing with duplicate data there, and things might get complicated. So I think leaving the authors list as a separate entity is a lot better overall, although it would introduce a few complexities in the app. It's a compromise. Okay, since we want to work with objects instead of arrays, this means every time we receive an array from the API, we need a function to convert it into an object. This is the kind of function that we need to test and make sure it works exactly as we want, and make sure future code is not going to break this function. So in the next clip, we'll get a testing framework up and running in this application, and we'll create tests alongside this new function to make sure that it's going to work as we expect it.